So let's talk about something that a lot of people don't acknowledge. Older people, they're never going to understand. Young people definitely don't understand because they did not grow up the same way we did. Now, I was born in 1989, right? You know, got to be a 90's kid, you know, in an era before social media, before the internet, before people had computers at home, cell phones. And it was a completely different world. Now, some people claim they're 90's kids, they're born in 94, 95. I'm like, no, you're not a 90's kid. You don't remember. There's the 90's, there's different parts, there's the early 90's, the mid 90's, and the late 90's. And me, born in 1989, I got to experience the whole 90's. And the millennials, we got issues, because the world changed so much as we were growing up, from the time we were born to the time we finished high school. It's just ridiculous. We had in the media, I was a kid, but in the 90's, not a whole lot of bad things happened. You had celebrity, had Tupac death, the LA riots. But as a kid, I didn't really know about that, Like, my parents didn't tell me. I might have heard about it, Kurt Cobain, but I didn't really know till I was older. But, the O.J. Simpson, I remember hearing about that, watched a little bit on TV, but I didn't really know what was going on. But, that's all stuff, was happening in the media. And so it didn't really, as a kid, it didn't really affect me. Now, when 9/11 happened, I was 12, preteen. I remember that clearly. And yeah, it was very, very, very devastating, very traumatizing. Just watching this happen, like, so surreal. Watching people, just die right before our eyes. And then now, we got a big problem, war. But, even though that was traumatizing, as a kid, I was safe, Nobody, didn't affect anybody close to me. But it was still, yeah, I was scared to travel. I was traveling by myself a lot as a kid. But it seems like after 9/11, everything just kind of, I want to say maybe becoming an adult, maybe the stress of that. But even other people can tell me, like, things went downhill after 9/11. Maybe not downhill, but things changed, Social media got big. Then you got the 2008, recession, which I didn't really understand till I was older. But I remember most adults just being very stressed out and kind of toxic at times. I know it broke up a lot of families. And, it didn't really affect me because I was, 18 when it happened, just getting out of high school. Nobody, let's see, I wish somebody would have told me, hey, try to buy a house then, because it was cheap. But, of course, nobody did that. It was all go to college or join the military. Now, another thing, the depressing thing about being a 90's kid is, you had shows, family-friendly shows from the 80's and 90's, Family Matters, Full House. It seemed like a good time to raise a family. It was a good time to be a teenager, adult, and a kid. A good time to raise a family. People minding their own business. There was a middle class. You can actually get a house, a decent house, with a regular job. And a lot of times, a man can support a family on one income. Now, I know in the 90's, it was the rise of feminism. Whatever happened, a lot of divorces happened. Like, my parents divorced in the late 90's when I was 8, 9. And then, I had a co-parent, be a stepkid. So for me personally, yeah, the 90's was a happier time. Maybe not just from a world point of view, but from my own personal, point of view and struggles. And my teenage years were pretty rough. So then you go from Family Matters and all that stuff. Now those shows, a lot of those shows would go off air in the late 90s. So it really shows, a lot of families were divorcing in the 90s. So it really goes to show, like, yeah, the world was changing. Then we get into reality TV, Kardashians. And I really think as a man, with the internet and all that, it's a lot, dating, the dating scene, the music, just influencing people. So I always say the boomers, I think they had the best upbringing and the best adult years, despite how they are now. I know some boomers, they're doing good, but some of them are seem like they're having the same problems we're having. Like, they can't retire, money. And I don't know. Maybe it's just something you gotta adapt to. But the main thing is, yeah, 90s kids us particularly, I think we're sad, because we know what it's like. Gen Z, they're used to, this is normal to them. They're used to social media, the internet, and all that. Older generations, they kind of, they were grown, they were able to grow up and kind of adapt better, I think. But I think the 90s kids, the millennials, we really got the short end of the stick. A lot of us got into debt. I just bought a home this year, finally. But it's, it's not as nice as what I could have gotten 10 years ago. But, I'm 36. Things are slowly getting better. Single with no kids, because, man, I just know so many people nowadays. They got kids, they're in broken families, co-parenting, divorced. And it's just hectic. Coming from a divorced family, I don't want to I just hate to put somebody, I hate to be in that situation and have my kids grow up that way. But the point of this video is, I just want to see who's with me on, the whole, why are the 90s kids so sad? Maybe, some people don't feel nothing, but me particularly, yeah, I think our generation so far has kind of gotten screwed, by experiencing the best of both worlds while growing up. But thank you for watching. Let me know what you think in the comment section. Have a good night.